Everybody, to another QB Power Hour. Today's topic is advanced bank fees in QuickBooks Online, and you'll notice in red there that this is an ACE approved course. Those of you that are advanced certified, this is eligible for your advanced continuing education credit. We'll mention a little bit more about that a little bit later. Our agenda for today is a little bit about QB Power Hour, and your hosts, Hector and myself, will discuss the CPE process and ACE, mention a few upcoming live events, and then get right into the topics to help you learn how QuickBooks Online bank fees significantly reduces data entry and increases accuracy in bookkeeping. So a little bit about QB Power Hour. It is a webinar series that we usually do every other Thursday. Our upcoming episodes on June 30th, we're going to talk about some tricky QuickBooks Online conversions. On July 14th, we'll talk about value pricing new QBO engagements. A lot of times we will split things half between desktop, half online, or sometimes like this one, we'll do all QuickBooks Online, and other webinars might be all QuickBooks Desktop. We occasionally have special guests who come in and join us with relevant and great third-party apps and practice management topics like value pricing or other things that we think will be very valuable to you all. Now, if you do need CPE today, like those of you that are a certified public accountant or a certified bookkeeper and you need CPE or continuing education credits, you must be attending this webinar live today. If you're watching the recording in the archives or on YouTube, that does not count for CPE credit. You must be logged in at least 50 minutes during the webinar today. We will give you a CPE password or keyword sometime during the webinar. You need to write that down, and then near the end of the webinar, answer a poll question with that CPE keyword. The CPE certificates will be emailed to you in about 6 weeks. So just be aware that we are behind a little bit on the CPE certificates, but keep an eye out for those, and we will get those to you. As I mentioned before, today's episode is eligible for ACE, Advanced Continuing Education Credits, for those of you who are advanced certified. And while we're talking about people that are advanced certified, I actually have a really quick poll question for you guys just to get an idea of how many of you are advanced certified. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll. And if you could quickly answer that for me, that would be fabulous to see how many of you are advanced certified. Okay, see how many of you are advanced certified. So you can see 30% of you are advanced certified, 48% or roughly half no, and 21% are working on it. Great. Well, by the way, it is a good idea to go ahead and get advanced certified. So those of you that are, congratulations. And those of you that are working on it, good luck. It is pretty rigorous, but it's worthwhile. All right, let's move along. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Michelle Long. I'm a CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship, owner of Long for Success in Kansas City, Missouri. But today I'm actually in the LA area, kind of South LA. I was doing Firm of the Future events this week here in the LA area, and I will be heading out as soon as we get off this webinar to fly back home to Kansas City. I'm the author of several different books. You can check those out on Amazon if you'd like to check those out. Hector, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Hector Garcia. I live and work in Miami, Florida. I'm the author of 0 books. That's supposed to be a joke.
Well, we'll have to work on that.
Yeah, we'll work on that. I can do an article. That's as much as I can do. I have my own classroom here in Miami, in which I do QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online training to both business owners and accountants. And member of the Trainer Writer Network, and the new council member participating on the Intuit Council for the next 2 years, giving Intuit feedback about QuickBooks products and Pro Advisor program and the accounting industry in general.
Very good. All righty. So some of our upcoming webinars and events, we've got the Intuit VCon, which is next week. A lot of great topics in there. I know I'm doing one on the benefits of the Pro Advisor program. So if you're relatively new, we'll talk about the benefits of the Pro Advisor program, your Find a Pro Advisor profile, and things like that. I'm also doing one on value pricing. Hector, are you doing some next week, or are you busy right then?
Yes, I'm doing a session on Wednesday at 1:45 p.m. Eastern on tax returns with QuickBooks Online. Basically, we'll talk about the workflow books to tax with Intuit Tax Online. It's the second time I do the same or similar presentation as in the winter or the January VCon.
All right, super. And then we hope to see you both, or see all of you. We'll see both of us at QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California. That's going to be another great event this year, so I hope you can attend that and join us there for that. So our agenda today, we're going to talk briefly about importing various file types. Then we'll talk more about some powerful bank rules and the new feature that just came out in the last week or so, the ability to auto-add. Then we'll talk about troubleshooting quickly on some download errors to disconnect and reconnect. And then another error that you might see when you're dealing with an incorrect account type. Then Hector will talk to you all about exporting and importing bank rules, tools to help you prepare the data before you import it into QuickBooks Online, and some alternative ways to import things, and then some other advanced topics. So let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, just to review, because this was covered in the regular certification materials, when you're importing transactions into QuickBooks Online, you have a variety of file types that you can import. Whereas with the desktop, you can only import those QBO files. With QuickBooks Online, you can also import a QFX or an OFX. Now, those are Quicken or Microsoft Money files. So, for example, I think like with Bank of America or Chase, they will only let you download, if you have a personal bank account, they will only let you download Quicken or Money. They won't let you download a QBO file for QuickBooks. So with QuickBooks Online, you can import a QFX or an OFX file without any problem. Now, the last choice, if you can't get one of those three file types that you should download or get, is a CSV file. With the CSV file, you can upload those, but you have to go through and map the fields and things like that. And I'll show you this in QuickBooks in just a moment. But the other thing that we wanted to talk about quickly is the multiple lines and dealing with these bank rules. And the bank rules in QuickBooks Online are actually more powerful than QuickBooks Desktop, and there's something new in them called the auto-add. So let me go on into QuickBooks, and I'll demonstrate this for you. So in QuickBooks Online, this is where I could upload a file. If you've downloaded a file, right up here in the upper right, you click on File, Upload, and again, here's the 4 file types that you can get. You would just select that file, and you're able to upload those transactions. Then they will be sitting here under the For Review, just like something that you had downloaded from the bank. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, let's say you need a whole year's worth of transactions, and your bank is only saying you can get the last 90 days. You really need to call the bank, okay? Don't just assume you can only get 90 days worth. Contact your bank, and you may have to even ask to speak to a couple of different people before you get someone who's knowledgeable in this area. Because, for example, I was able to contact a bank in Kansas City called Commerce Bank. And, you know, I was telling them what I really wanted, what I needed, and then they figured out, well, you can have 12 months or 24 months of data to download if you pay us some money. So for 12 months, now get ready for this, it was a whole $6.95. For 24 months of data, it was $9.95. So some of the banks have realized that they can charge you for this, and this wasn't anywhere on their website. But I was able to get 2 years of transactions downloaded so that I could import those into QuickBooks Online. Now, there's thousands and thousands, probably 20,000 or more banks out there. So I'm not sure if your bank will do that or not. But in a few minutes, Hector's going to talk to you about some things when you can only get bank statements, how you can convert those and import those so they're in here like all the other transactions waiting for you to work with them. Now, once you have your transactions downloaded or imported, one of the most powerful things you're going to want to do is to set up some bank rules. So you'll notice I set up a rule here for Ellis Equipment Rental, this A rental, and we have 2 transactions where we've spent some money. One of them was $800 and one $1,200. So let's go in and look at that bank rule. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Manage Rules button, and you'll see I have this bank rule set up here. I'm going to go ahead and edit this so we can take a look at it. Now, I set it up for A rental for money out. I could have chose money in, and I wanted it on all of my accounts. Now, this is where you can get more powerful than the desktop. In QuickBooks Desktop, you cannot have the 2 lines here, all right? So I have 2 criteria, and I can choose if it meets any or all of these conditions for this bank rule. So, for example, if the bank text contains, you don't want to say is exactly, because sometimes there's a store number or things like that on there. So if the bank text contains, I've got A rental, and the amount is less than, now I did $1,000 because there's one transaction for $800 and one for $1,200. But this is where you can get more powerful by adding an additional line in there, an additional criteria. One reason you might want to do that is maybe things that are less than a certain dollar amount don't need any kind of approval or something. Maybe everything less than a certain dollar amount you want to automatically, let's say, go to office supplies. If you were setting this up on staples, you might say if the bank text contains staples and the amount is less than, say, $300, go ahead and post it to office supplies. But if it's more than $300, I don't want this rule applied. I need to review that transaction. It could be a fixed asset. So this is where you can get very powerful with your bank rules by setting up additional criteria here. You can just add a line to put additional criteria. And so I think that's something that's great, and it is different than QuickBooks Desktop. Then you go ahead and map, okay, what do I want the payee name to be, and which category or account do you want it to go to? We could also split this if we wanted to. Let's say 50%, if it was meals and entertainment, you could put 50% to a deductible account, 50% non-deductible. Or if it's a loan payment, you could put part of it to principal and part of it to interest. Now, this is the new feature right here that was just added in the last week. So you know how a lot of times when you come in to work with your downloaded transactions, you'll have a whole bunch of them that are recognized. You know, let's say maybe 14 or 15 or more transactions are already going to be recognized. But with this auto add, what you can do, set up these rules, because think about it, a lot of your clients have the same transactions month after month, the same rent payments, the same phone bill, the same gas bill, the same utility bill. They go to the same suppliers and vendors a lot of times. So what you can do is you can say, you know what, you can automatically add this, because I don't need to review the rent expense every month and make sure that it's okay. I know it's going to be all right. So when you select auto add this to my books, it will automatically post it into QuickBooks and in the check register, or match it depending on the situation. In this situation we're adding, though, we would automatically add this, and there will be a special icon there indicating that it was auto add. So this is just another new feature Intuit has added that will really help save us a lot of time. Now, I'm not going to check that one right now because I wanted to be able to show you how this rule applied to the first transaction there, the one that was less than $1,000, but it did not apply to the one over $1,000. So if you have uploaded or have available, let's say, a whole year's worth of transactions here, sort these things by description, so all the ones that are the same are together, set up your bank rule, and then it will apply that bank rule to all transactions that are applicable. So it might be like all 12 months worth. And so again, this is huge time saver when you're working with these bank rules. And I really like that new auto add feature. So make sure you check that out and test it out with your own books as well. Now, let's talk about a couple of quick errors that might happen with the downloaded transactions. And then Hector will get into some of the more details on importing and exporting some other ideas. So the download errors, this is a quick review because this is in the basic materials. But if you've got a bank feed error, and that's the nice thing about using your QBOA dashboard, is on your client dashboard, you can see the last download date, and you can see if a bank feed has failed. And so you can monitor all of your clients on your QBOA dashboard. So if you've had a bank feed that fails with no apparent reason, you're not sure why it failed, there's several different steps to take to try to fix that, and you should do them in this order. So notice how this one has 8 transactions waiting for me to deal with versus a savings account. I've dealt with all of those transactions. So I'm going to work with the savings account for this example first. So the first thing you'd want to do is click on the update button up here to manually try to update the bank feed. If it fails and you get the error and it's not working, then come in and try this one, edit the sign-in information. Your client might have changed their password, so you may need to work with them a little bit and see if that password's changed. Now, I don't like to get my clients' passwords, so I usually do this remotely with my clients, just like when I first set the bank feed up. I want to log in remotely, and then I have the client enter their password, and I'll walk them through, in this step, walk them through trying to fix that. Now, if that does not fix it, then you go to step 3, which is edit the account info. Now, this step is very important that you make sure you've worked with all your transactions first, because what's going to happen is we're going to break and reconnect the bank feed. When you pardon me, when you break your bank feed, that's going to get rid of these transactions that are waiting for you to deal with them. So you want to go ahead, like in this example, I would want to go ahead and deal with these 8 transactions prior to breaking the bank feed. Now in this one, I've already done that, so I can go ahead and edit the account info, scroll down here, and you're going to see the little disconnect this account on save. What that will do is it will break that bank feed, and then you can try to reconnect that, set it up again, and see if that fixes it. If that does not fix it, then you need to contact ProAdvisor support and let them know, and they have a special department that will work with the banks on trying to see what's happening and how to fix that, things like that. But if you don't have an error code or anything, those are the 3 steps you'd want to take. Now, another common problem that people have, and they don't know how to deal with it, is they will be downloading transactions, and they will come down here, and let's say they're trying to enter this, and they're trying to assign a transaction, let's say to office expenses here, and you're going to get an error message that says you need to select a different type of account for this transaction. And people are saying, well, what's the problem? I'm selecting office supplies and actually your office expenses. Any account that you choose there will give you that error message that you need to select a different type. So this is a common problem, and people are having a hard time figuring it out. And so the problem is that the bank or the account type up here is set up wrong. The problem is not assigning a transaction to an account type. The problem is the account itself. In the chart of accounts, here we have that Visa wrong account. We set the wrong account up as an other current liability. You can see the little online icon there. You can only set these things up as a credit card or a bank account. If they're an other asset or other current asset or an other current liability, you can set it up and you can download the transactions, but you won't actually be able to post them to anything because you're going to keep getting that error message that says you need to select a different account type. So if you're getting that error message, the key there is to take a look at that account type in the chart of accounts, okay? So in the chart of accounts there, you'll want to do that, okay? Doesn't breaking the bank feed require you to deal with the outstanding transactions? Yes, Kristen, that's what I mentioned, that you want to deal with the outstanding transactions first. You want to make sure you deal with those so that it's 0 down there to begin with. So somebody says the AutoAdd feature is cool, and then they want to know if you change the class in a bank rule, will it retroactively change other bank transactions previously accepted? No, Joan. When you set up a bank rule, the bank rule will apply to whatever's sitting there in the transactions for review that have not been added or matched yet. It will not apply to any transactions that have already been posted and added or matched into QuickBooks. So it only will apply to new transactions waiting to be worked with. Does that make sense? Okay. Kristen says you will not be able to break the bank feed until you deal with the outstanding. Kristen, I believe you can go ahead and break that bank feed and you'll lose those. So you want to make sure that you've dealt with all those outstanding transactions first, okay? Somebody says, how do we reset it back to auto? I'm not sure, Matthew, what you want to reset back to auto. The bank rules, you could go in there and do that. Okay, now Sue says, will the new feature auto add to my books only add transactions, or will it also accept a matched? Sue, I am pretty sure that when you're setting up that bank rule, when you set up the bank rule, it's an auto add feature as opposed to a matching feature. Okay, so when you do the auto add, it's for transactions that you're adding, which is perfect for your clients that use lots of debit and credit card transactions, particularly, you know, those bank transactions with debit and credit cards where you haven't entered them in QuickBooks already. This gives you the opportunity to auto add. Or for online payments, let's say you've set it up to automatically pay the utility bill every single month, because you can't set that up as recurring because the amount varies. If you've set that up as an auto payment from your bank account, then in QuickBooks Online, you can set up that bank rule to auto add that utility payment and stuff. So those things are great. Some people are asking about the CPE keyword. We're going to get that in a minute. Okay, why do some accounts on bank feeds auto-update and others have to manually update? Michael, that's a really good question. A lot of these banks will automatically update them every single night. Just when you wake up the next morning, you've got cleared and downloaded transactions sitting there waiting for you to deal with them. There's a few banks that do it every few days, like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So really, that would be a question that you would have to ask your individual bank how that works. And Angela says, can you change the type of account with pending transactions? Yes, Angela, you can. In order to fix that, when you have the wrong account type, what you want to do is you come out here to your chart of accounts, you would edit this account. Oh, darn, I just thought about it. You may have to break that bank feed first, but I don't know that you're going to lose those transactions. If I remember correctly, this has been months and months ago when I tried this. I think I was able to edit and change the account type, and I did not lose those. So what I would suggest you do, give it a try and test it out, like go into that sample company and try it out over there, and then you can see how that works for practice, okay? And that's a good idea to always use that sample company for practice. You can go to your own bank, download some transactions in a QBO file, add that new account into the sample company, upload transactions, and try it out and test it in there. The minute you log out of that sample company, it erases anything you did. So it's great for you to be able to test some of those things. Matthew says you can always add another account and then merge them. Matthew, that's a good idea, but I'm not sure if you've set it up for downloading transactions. I think you'd have to break that feed before you can merge them.
That is true. That's true, Michelle.
Yeah.
By the way, that merging concept, it's really good sometimes, but you can't have any open transactions pending before you merge. But he's right. That could be a solution.
Right, right. And then Kathy says, if you do lose those transactions, can't you download them and import them again later? Yes, you can, Kathy. It just saves you from doing that if you go ahead and just deal with those, okay? All righty. Very good. We've got several different, and you can't merge 2 different account types either. Thanks, Kathy. That's a good point as well. They do have to be the same detail type in order to merge those things, okay? All right, Hector, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the CPE keyword, and then we will pass this to you for a little while. So the CPE keyword today is advanced, okay? CPE keyword is advanced. This webinar today is eligible for ACE credit, Advanced Continuing Education credits. So if you are advanced certified in QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, advanced certified, this will be eligible for the ACE credits. Now, don't type this word in the question box. Write this word down towards the end of this webinar. You will get a CPE keyword, and you'll want to answer the poll with the keyword here. You'll get a poll question with this question there. And people are asking, how does one report the ACE credit to Intuit? John, I can't remember, but they will be putting something in your ProAdvisor portal where you will be able to record your ACE credits. And you need 9 credits over a 3-year period. So you roughly need 3 credits per year to be able to do that. And Hector and I are very thrilled that QB Power Hour is one of the 3 ACE approved providers right now, and we are the only one that's providing it for free. So make sure you stay subscribed, if you will, to QB Power Hour so you can get your ACE credits with us for free.
One thing, Michelle, what people have the CPE keyword up, we will send into it the list of people that attended the webinar. However, that will not be the way it gets reported. This is self-reporting, and I believe Intuit will then use our database to double check. But you are responsible for reporting on your own. So this is not going to be something that we are responsible for. We will send Intuit the list, but you are responsible for self-reporting.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Okay, Hector, I'm going to transfer it to you in case I have to jump off and get going to the airport, but I'm going to try to stay around till the top of the hour and answer questions and things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you, Hector, and let you take it for a little while, and I will answer questions in the background.
Perfect. All right. Okay.
All right, we see your screen.
Perfect. All right. Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So I like the fact that they added the word advance into it, because anytime they put the word advance into it, it challenges me to, like, find out what I can do to really try to bring something new and fresh and quote unquote advance into it. So I am gonna go through some experimentation that I've done with QBO files, and kind of discuss some concepts that I've done, and I've done some really interesting things with bank feeds. First thing I like to do is start with bank rules, and we'll talk about exporting the bank rules and importing the bank rules. But I'm going to piggyback on some of the stuff that Michelle said on the auto add. What ends up happening over time, if you all know this, that manage multiple accounts, is you may have one client that is a great example of the average client. The type of expenses they have, the type of vendors they have, and they basically start building up this great vendor list that could be used across the board through multiple companies, and the chart of accounts as well, and the bank rules as well. So that's the great benefit of exporting the rules. Now, in order for you to export the rules, these rules have to be explicit. They have to be part of your rule list. This is not the same thing as the accounts that get automatically recognized because you have used it before. So I'll give you an example. We are right here under one of my credit card accounts, and we'll see there Amazon. And if we scroll down, we see a whole lot of Amazon. Okay, so if I click on the first one, okay, and I give it a category. So let's say I'm going to give it office expenses. And in some cases, for whatever reason, I may skip the payee, which I don't recommend. But I'm saying in some cases I may skip the payee and then go ahead and click on add. Now, what ends up happening is, if I add it, QuickBooks Online will now suggest or recognize, quote unquote, all these Amazons here. However, the big problem with this is, because I skipped the payee in the first place, all these transactions are going to come in without a payee, which is a really, really big problem. So let me go ahead and do what a lot of people do, which is, oh, these are all recognized office supplies. Okay, awesome. And select a whole bunch of Amazon, and then go to batch action and accept. And I have a setting that is requesting me to double check the class each time. That's why this comes up. But let me just go ahead and accept a couple of these, because I want to make the point on the problem with accepting transactions without a payee. Now I'm going to go ahead and realize I made that mistake, and then go ahead on the next one and actually create a payee or create a vendor for it. So let me do Amazon.com, create that as a vendor, and then go ahead and click on add. Now you will notice that moving forward, now when the recognition happens, it will add the payee in there. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is accept a transaction without putting a payee. Now that may not seem very harmful, and I'll kind of explain to you why with some other situations, but generally speaking, it is a problem for me, at least. So let me go ahead and accept a couple of these, and let me click on add. Again, I have the setting to warn me if the class has not been selected. So what's the problem with this? So when I go do a report, okay, so now we're sort of beyond bank feeds for a second, but I want to show you the accounting effect of bank feeds. So when I go pull a report, and for example, I want to pull up office expenses. So let me just do an all dates here to show you the transactions that I just pulled. So there's my office expenses category. So I'm going to go ahead and click on 2102. And then you notice some of them have payees and some of them don't have payees, right? Now, for the most part, because the information came in the memo, I am not terribly worried about it. Okay, yes, I'm not terribly worried about it. However, there are some situations, let's say I have a very large expense category, and I want to group these by vendor, and I want to go into group by and click on vendor, or employee or customer for that matter. But for the most part, we're dealing with expenses with the vendor. I'll do a run report, and what happens is, as I start wanting to see subtotals by vendor, I'm now screwed basically, because I got a whole bunch of transactions here under Amazon adding up to the 577, and a whole bunch under no vendor adding to 1525. So the bad news is that once this happens, there's no way to fix it. There's no third-party tool that can fix it. There's no accountant tool that can fix it. The reclassified tool cannot fix it. So, I mean, I would obviously love for Intuit to say, oh, or I would love for Intuit employee to be watching this and go, oh yeah, that makes tons of sense. Let me go ahead and have the ability to fix transactions that don't have a payee. However, am I totally screwed? No, because if I go to transactions and then I go into banking and then I click on where it says in QuickBooks, okay, I'm going to see all the transactions that were added. Okay, now unfortunately I don't have the capacity to filter here to say which ones actually have a payee and which ones don't have a payee. The way the screen is set up, it will tell you the description, but that's the actual bank description, not the actual payee. So I would have to somehow know, maybe based on the dates or something like that, and then basically hand select them here and undo them. For my sake, I'm just going to go ahead and just select them all, and I'm going to undo all. I tell you that there's a reason for that. I'm going to go ahead and undo all. And the reason why I'm undoing all, because when I go back into for your review, my rules now, because remember, I added the vendor name subsequent to the first group that I did, my rules now are going to pick it up correctly. So then, yeah, at this point, then I'm good to go. I can select them all and then click on batch actions and accept. Okay, so that's kind of the first. That's concept number one. Is now the payees are now going to be recognized the second time around because I put it the second time around. But let's take this a little bit further, a little bit deeper, and start thinking about some of this auto add stuff. So I'm going to go into Amazon and then I'm going to give it an actual real category, office supplies. Okay, and then I can give it a if I am using QuickBooks Online Plus, I can give it a customer, I can give it a class, and I can give it a location. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add, and then what's going to happen moving forward, my vendors are going to be filled, and my categories are going to be filled. So by clicking on add, I'll be able to solve that initial problem that I had before, with grouping the transactions by vendor. But the problem is when Amazon shows up again and again and again, Amazon will not be auto added because I have to go in the rule and explicitly explain that I want to auto add this. However, when you see a recognized account, and before accepting it, when you click on it, go ahead and put a vendor's name and put an expense category. And I'm going to put a different expense category so the system kind of resets and recognizes it as a new rule. And then you're going to see down here a little tiny button. It's really hidden and buried in there, but it's actually pretty awesome, which is called "We will set Amazon to promotional from now on." Now, if I click add, this will happen on the back end. This would be what I call an implicit rule. I can't edit it. I can't tell it to automatically add. But if I click here where it says edit setting, if I actually click on that button, then I have two options. I can click leave on categorize, which basically means ignore the effect of the new change that I just did, or I can click on create custom rule. And this just goes back to the same thing Michelle showed. There's nothing new about this. Michelle showed this. And then I can click here. I have to give it a name. So I'll click rule name Amazon, and I'll put the right category now, right? Remember, I had to switch the category for the system to think it's a new rule. And then I'm going to click the little checkbox here called automatically add. And a really important piece, I think Michelle may have left this out, I want to put in the memo that it was automatically added because for one reason or the other, I may want to search this or group these or something like that. So on the memo, I'm going to put auto-add. Now, really important, right? So when you're thinking about bank feeds in an advanced level, if I override the memo like this, if I put anything on the memo, QuickBooks will no longer bring the original bank text into the auto-added transaction. So when you're doing this, when you're clicking this button, you have to really be 100% sure that these rules are going to be correct. Because if, for example, if you have another vendor called, I don't know, Amazon car repair or Amazon smoothie store or something like that, this is going to reclassify anything that has the word Amazon, period, and put it into this office expenses and put the payee Amazon, and you will lose the original bank text. So you have to be really careful and not get trigger happy with this automatically add concept. Now, what it would be really nice, and this is obviously a suggestion I gave to Intuit out of the million suggestions I gave him, it would be really nice to be able to do both, add a memo and also append the original bank text. That would be really interesting. I mean, it's just a suggestion I made, but I think that would be really interesting because it gives us the best of both worlds. Now, why am I advocating? So after I said, be careful with putting a memo because you're going to lose the original bank text, why am I advocating putting the memo here? Well, the reason for that is because the search utility right now as we speak in QuickBooks, and this may be a workaround of June 16, 2016, the search utility doesn't give me the ability to really say, okay, only show me transactions that were auto added. Like, yes, I can do that on the bank feed screen, but I can't do that in the regular search utilities. So what I would do with that text, assuming that that I did that intentionally, putting that auto add text in there. What I would do in that text is go into my search and type auto add, right? That way it searches through my memo. Okay, but I'm gonna do it here under advanced search. And then I'm gonna click here where it says memo, and then I'm gonna go ahead and type auto add or whatever text I put into that memo, click on search, and then everything that was auto added will show up here. So that's actually make a pretty big deal about that because in some cases, let's say you teach your client how to auto add, make sure you're teaching them how to put these little things in there because then it could get a little bit out of control trying to figure out what were people doing. But again, as I mentioned it, once I click on that transaction, my memo will say auto add. It's not going to show me the original bank text. So that's a real important key component to this whole thing to keep in mind. Again, we're thinking of bank feeds in an advanced way. I'm trying to get you thinking into all the consequences of everything that you do. So when I go back into reports, and I'm going to go back into profit and loss, go into all dates and click on run, and then click on my office expenses. Now I'm going to see everything that was auto added, and I'm also going to see what was not auto added. So you can see what was not auto added because it actually brought into the text box the original text. So I think it would be nice to be able to see both, or for the search to retain some sort of auto add tag. Now, talking about the auto add tag or the concept of the auto add tag, when you actually go back into bank feeds and go to banking, and Michelle I think discussed this briefly. When you click here on the In QuickBooks tab, you're going to see everything that was added into QuickBooks. But you will also know by looking at this little tiny icon here that has a little plus sign and the rule, you know how it was added or what mechanism was used to be added. And you'll see a link to the actual rule itself. So if you start noticing, again, if Amazon car rental starts being put in here, you can actually go in here and click on the rule and then realize, you know what, maybe I don't want anything with the word Amazon. Maybe I need to be more explicit and put it needs to say Amazon.com or it needs to say Amazon Marketplace or something like that, right? So that's when you start really thinking about how these rules really would work. The other piece piece of information that happens with bank rules is when you create bank rules initially, you may do a bank rule for a specific bank account or maybe for different bank accounts. So I'm going to go back into that rule itself. When you first do it, it says all bank accounts. That means if I pay Chase with my checking account, it hits the rule. If I pay check with my credit account, it hits. I mean, if I pay Amazon with my credit card account, it hits the rule. So one of the things that ends up happening to me in my practice, some of my clients tell me, yes, Hector, I have 4 credit cards extensions under one main account. One of these users, when they buy things through Amazon, that's office supplies. However, when my wife or my husband, my spouse, a non-member of the business, buys Amazon, that's a personal expense. So this is really when we can start thinking about, if your client's spending behaviors match a specific bank account where they're paying from, then we can say, all right, so for this rule, we're going to go ahead and make every single one of these transactions, every single bank, we're going to make it hit that rule with the exception of that one, because that one happens to be the spouse or the other person that actually, when they spend the money in Amazon, that one, this 800809, if you can see the bank account, that one ends up being the personal one. So what I end up doing is I'll click on save, and then I go into my rule, wait until that finishes saving. So I'm gonna when this decides to finish saving, I'm gonna go into the rule and duplicate it. Okay, so I'm gonna go into rules. up here in the top right. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this bad boy here. I'm going to click on copy. And then I'm going to call this one Amazon Personal. And just to make sure that I do hit something, I'm going to go ahead and reduce that to Amazon. But then this is going to be the same payee, Amazon.com, different category. So at this point, I can have an account called Personal Expenses that will maybe hit an equity account of some sort. And I don't want to get into, why in accounting we do things like this. But then I can do something like this, and I'll keep the auto add in there. Again, we can put auto add, and then I can put something else after auto add. I can put, client stated all Amazon from 0892 equals personal, and then we can start documenting some of the, because this is automation, but the problem with automation is we lose control. So by documenting it here in the memo, that becomes really interesting. Now we actually remind ourselves why in the first place we chose that Amazon to be there. So very, very important. I have to click here. It says in, and I'm gonna uncheck the other ones, and then click just on that one, which is the one my client identified, that if Amazon was spent from that extension of the credit card, that would be a personal expense. And then we'll click on save. And then you'll notice, I think Amazon, this is my actual credit card. So I spent tons of money on Amazon, and every user in my organization goes to Amazon. So I picked that example because I'm pretty confident that if I go to another one of the accounts, we're going to see Amazon again. So let's see what we got here. And Michelle, if you're still there and you wanna start asking me some questions, I want to just make sure I don't miss any questions while I'll kind of look for another Amazon transaction.
Okay, Hector, yeah. One thing I would like to add, I'm trying to answer these questions, and we do have hundreds and hundreds of people on here, so I'm typing as fast as I can while also packing a few things. But anyway, so one of the questions that I've seen several times is people are saying, about the auto add and this, that. It will only auto add if you set up the bank rule and check the box. It won't auto add on its own.
Exactly.
So let's just make sure that's very clear, that you are in control. You set the rules up. You're the one who checks the auto add box. So if you don't want it to auto add, just don't do that.
Right.
It's not going to do it automatically unless you guys actually set that up and it does it.
Right.
So there were several questions kind of concerned about that.
Right.
And so I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I will tell you, take my word for it. Trust me on this one. AutoAdd is a game changer. It is, again, you don't have to use it, but it's there. And it does significantly change how you plan automation. This is a game changer. Just by thinking about the concept of, hey, if I go to Home Depot by my house, which is Home Depot 90615, which is the store number that's by my house, that's a personal expense. If I go to any Home Depot, that's a job cost. Just thinking about that, not requiring you to go look at the Home Depot and look at the city where the Home Depot is and do an auto add with confidence. That's a great feature. All right, so we'll just go back to this right here. So for example, I clicked on the in QuickBooks tab so I can look at all the things that were added. And then, for example, we have this is the account, the 5996. This is not one of the ones that were personal. So everything that was auto added in here, I can click on it real quick to review it. And that should be office expenses. Exactly. That's exactly what I was expecting, office expenses. But when I actually go into 0892, and I haven't confirmed this yet, so I really hope it did work. I'm going to click on the transaction, and that should have been classified. Oops, okay, maybe that was done previous to the new rule. Yeah, that's possible that it was previous to the new rule. But the point is that these, and maybe what I'll do is I'll undo a couple of these. I'm going to undo these because these were added before the rule. So I'm going to undo these. So it puts them back into for your review. Okay, and then notice that when I undo them, it won't auto add them again, because obviously we will get into a circular issue, right? Undo, auto add, undo, auto add. But if I actually go into my rules, and I'll show you. So that's another question that people have is, hey, wait a second, I broke it. I auto added, I undid it, and now it's not auto adding anymore. So no, that's not the case. It didn't break. What happens is when you do that, when you do go through that reversal process, I mean, again, kudos to the programmers. Was not an easy thing to think about, but yeah. So what they did is they said, hey, we have to have it stop at some point. If not, this thing is going to go back and forth like crazy. Undo auto add, undo auto add. So one of the things that triggers an auto add, it's making a modification to the rule. So look, I'm just going to change the name of the rule there and click on save. So if you make any modification to the rule, it's like it tells QuickBooks Online, hey, go run your auto ads again. Okay. And hopefully, again, this is auto ad was just added 2 weeks ago. But there it is. 3 transactions added to the books. There's the message right there. So that's another really interesting, cool trick. If you edit something in the rule, auto add kicks in again. So when I go back in QuickBooks, you're gonna see these 3 Amazon were actually added with a different rule. And what's really cool, I can see which rule was applied. Okay, I find that to be super powerful. Again, if you're concerned about auto add, don't be, right? Don't be. Now, I'm saying that from the perspective, don't use it if you don't want to. Be concerned if your client uses it without guidance, without training, without support. From that perspective, yes. So I think that if any of you support QuickBooks Online clients, your job in the next 2 weeks is to call every single one of them, especially the ones that do bank rooms, and say, hey, can I talk you through the auto add concept? That way they're sort of not tempted to be doing all these things, because this could, as I mentioned earlier, this could just sort of create some damage to the accounting. So auto add is there. You can't remove the fact that it's there, but it is going to be very important to educate the world about it. And that's why I'm just kind of just reiterating what Michelle said and just going through it, because I think it's really important to do that. Michelle, are there any other questions?
13.
Yes.
13 minutes left, Hector.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't limit me. All right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So now we get to the point where our rules are a beautiful thing. We have everything set up correctly. Some rules with auto add, some rules without auto add. Then simply what we can do is we can click on the little icon up there and click on export rules. And the system tells you, follow these steps, whatever. Honestly, it's just an Excel file that opens up. When you open the Excel file, then you get this gibberish that gets put into an Excel file. Now, I say gibberish because the way I would have approached this would be just a flat file that everybody can see. Right? That's the way I would approach it. But anyway, don't worry about my rant. Just worry that this actually does work really well. And I'm just gonna just show you real quick what's in here. So these rules in all these texts, right? It contains this is obviously computer code for, hey, is this rule contains? Is this rule does not contain? Does a rule contain multiple words for it to work? Is the auto add in? Is the auto add not in? That sort of thing. So that is all part of the text that's in there. So you actually technically don't have to mess with this. I'm just showing it to you because I like seeing the behind the scenes of stuff. But the way this will work is if this is if these rules are great, but maybe some of these don't pertain to other clients, just manually delete the ones you don't want to import. So let's say, for example, I want to delete the top one, but not the bottom one, for example. So you can actually export your master rules from a really nicely set up QuickBooks Online file, delete the stuff that doesn't pertain maybe to another customer, save it, and then, imagine we're logged into some other client's file. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete these 2 rules to show you. So I'm going to hit delete and delete. So let's say, for example, I'm logged into somebody's file that has no rules. And then I'm going to go into import rules, and I'm going to go to browse, and then I'm going to go look for that file. That should be somewhere in the downloads folder. Open up that file up, and remember I deleted that one line. Click on next. It tells you, okay, this is what I'm about to bring in, and it tells you that it's an auto add, so you can actually decide at that point whether you want to see it or not. Now I can't edit them from here, but I can after I import them. Then I go to next. And then if your chart of accounts looks identical, if your vendor names look identical, then they're going to be pre-populate in there, so you can just hit import. But if you're bringing this to another QuickBooks file, remember, I may not have the same chart of accounts. I may not have the same payee list. right? So you may want to think about before exporting and importing a rule list, you may want to also think about exporting your vendor list, exporting your chart of accounts, and importing it into that other QuickBooks file. Again, you can export it, clean it up in Excel, edit what you don't want, bring it in. That way, when you bring the rules in, you're not finding yourself having to type Amazon and mapping each of these, because this is mapping. This is a mapping principle. The reason why it automatically showed up is because I'm using the same file, but it doesn't work as well when you're working on a brand new file. Again, different vendor list, different chart of accounts. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's my thing on that on the bank rules part. Okay. So let me. We only got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to show you another really piece of interesting thing, and this is like the areas that I kind of experiment with. Recently, in one of the Facebook posts, someone, I won't say who they are, but they probably know who they are. Someone showed a screenshot of this, of what you're looking at here, and ask, hey, where does this information about quote unquote bank balance come from? So we know in QuickBooks that's my register balance, and in bank balance, where does that come from? So if you do a direct connect, right, when you log in your username and password, you bring in the first 90 days, and your bank feeds is working automatically. Well, that information is coming from the bank. That I can't really do much about that. But when you do manual uploads, where you manually upload a QBO file, where does this bank balance come from? And again, this doesn't affect your bank. This is just reference. This is just for show, and it does confuse some people. So that's a whole other story. But that right there doesn't affect your accounting in any way. This is just for you to see what the bank gave you as information about it. Okay, so if you look at this one, 7418, bank balance, it says it's zero. So I'm going to show you where that comes from, especially from the perspective of a new QBO file. So let me, I'm going to open up a program. I forgot what the name of that program was. Oh, TextEdit. I'm going to open a program called TextEdit, which is the Notepad version in the Mac. So if you're on a PC, it would be Notepad. And through TextEdit, I'm going to go ahead and open one of these QBO files. And what this is going to show me, and again, you can't do this with Word, you can't do this with Excel. It has to be TextEdit or Notepad on the PC side. So what you end up seeing is you see the guts, or let's say the insides of a QBO file. So I'm just going to show you what you really need to know about this. So down here somewhere, we get the FID. FID and the into BID, these two things, it's what tell QuickBooks what's the account, what's the bank that you're working with, and it's an internal database of different banks. So if I were to import this twice, this QBO file, the second time around it won't let me because it is the same bank account with the same transactions. Okay, if I were to take this QBO file and change my Intuit BID and my FID and use a different bank per se, when I import it, it's going to recognize it as a brand new bank account, and and it will let me import it as a second bank account. Now, I'm not saying you should do that or in what circumstances you would do that, but I'm just saying. Now, the actual bank account number is going to be in here. So that's the actual bank account number. That's in here, right? So you can, if you actually edit this actual bank account number and I re-upload, QuickBooks will also recognize it as a whole different bank account. And again, I wouldn't even have to change the bank. I could keep my Chase Bank, but just change the bank account number. And again, it'll let me import it as a separate bank. So a weird use case for this. I had a client that wanted me to catch up 3 years worth of banking, 2014, 2013, 14, and 15, but they wanted their 2016 in real time while I do the catch up to be 100% clean with the beginning balance. They didn't want the process of me bringing the transactions to affect the running balance. So we basically downloaded the QBO file, changed the bank account number here, imported it, worked on it as if it was an entirely different bank account. Then when I was finished catching up, reconciling, then I merged them. But the only way I was able to import it is by me manually going into this QBO file and changing the bank account number here. Okay, so another interesting piece of information here. The date of the transaction is stored in this DT start and this DT end. Whether it's a debit or a credit, that's stated here. The amount is stated here. the name of the vendor is stated here. So for example, let's say I wanted to replace all Ring Central Inc. with RC Inc. So I'm going to put RC Inc. And again, I said this is experimentation. Okay, I'm not saying this is what you should be doing, or try to, or maybe some people are trying to figure out what the heck is Hector doing. Yeah, I'm doing crazy stuff. That's fine. So I'm gonna do replace all, and then basically I'm gonna change inside of my QBO file. I'm gonna change the name of that vendor. So when I go and I'm gonna go ahead and save this. I'll show you. Okay, so if I try to upload this, again, because I changed the bank account number, that happened as well. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this, and I did two things. I changed the bank account number from my QBO file, and I also went in there and changed one of the vendor names. I know this is crazy stuff, but that again is the spirit of experimentation. So notice that because I changed the bank account number, it doesn't try to connect it to a current bank account automatically. It actually requests me to use a different credit card account. So I could create a separate credit card account completely, or I could bring it into the same credit card account. I mean, depending on what I'm trying to achieve, I sort of gave an example on how that would work earlier. So yes, Michelle, should we do the CPE question?
Yes, I was going to go ahead and launch that poll question, if that's okay, and then you can finish up.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm uploading that modified transaction. While that uploads, please answer the CPE polling question. Yeah, okay. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, all right. So I gotta catch up my train of thought again here. Okay, so here, so again, I'm gonna go back to the original file that I the original bank I uploaded, in which I did not modify the name, and I'm just gonna show you. This stuff came in as Ring Central. Hopefully you can see it there. That came in as Ring Central. Okay, this is the original one, but the new one that I modified, which is this one. I'm going to go ahead and go down to the R's and show you that doesn't say Ring Central anymore. It says RC. Now, don't get me started on how Intuit or QuickBooks figured out how to quote unquote clean up vendors. I actually didn't say it's RC. I said it's RC Inc. That's why one of the real cool things about up here in the top, on the little baby gear here in the top, if you click on that, you can click here where it says show bank details. And then basically you're going to get the raw bank data instead of having this new interpreted data. So if I click on show bank details, I'm going to click here on compact, and I click on rows 300. That way I just want to see more stuff. And then I'm going to go down to my to that RC again. I just want to show you that the stuff that came in is exactly what I edited in the QBO file. Here we go. See, RC Inc. That's exactly what I typed in inside of that QBO file. So that's sometimes you may want this raw bank data with the full payee names, right? For example, let's say what happens. This one, La Nueva Tijana Restaurant. I don't even remember that expenditure, but you look at this one right here. That's my full bank name. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the bank details and see what Intuit's interpretation of this one was. Now, that's a tough one. That's a weird Spanish restaurant with a weird name. That one may not be sort of reinterpreted. Oh, yes, it was. Look, it was interpreted to La Nueva. So I don't know. I mean, there's one thing that just drives me a little nuts. And again, look, I love Intuit. I was just part of the council. I'm absolutely amazed with and hopeful with the things that are coming with QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online, I have a feeling it's going to be such an immense game changer in the entire global space of accounting very, very soon. But there are little things that I say, man, how does this work? Like my vendor name was La Nueva Tijana Restaurant, and it interpreted to La Nueva. That makes it challenging sometimes to try to figure out what is it that is there. So now, one thing I tell Intuit, thank you, for giving me this little checkbox that says show bank details, because sometimes I'm just not having it. I'm not going to deal with Intuit's interpretation of my bank feeds. It makes me work way too hard. So I'm just going to click on show bank details just to make sure that I'm looking at what the bank is giving me. Now, in the long run, I think that this interpretation or this renaming or this whatever, I don't even know what name to give it, is going to get better and better and better as Intuit learns from the collective world of the 1.4 million users using bank feeds. But there's still, that's still a work in process. Still work in process. Now I see somebody saying, "Hey, I noticed your Amazon is not being hit by the rules." Ah, good observation. Let me go back into remember, this is a new credit card I uploaded called credit card. When I go back into my bank rules, a great question. When I go back into my bank rules here, I'm going to edit it. Remember, we were very specific about what rule, what banks, what credit cards were included, and that sort of thing. Maybe we're just going to make a change to the rule here. I'll make the name, and I'll make sure that they're all uh, accounted for, right? Because you have to make sure that they're all selected and just make a change, and then we'll do another auto add, and I'll change this to Amazon, and then I click on save. And now on this new credit card that I added, my rules should actually work pretty well. So you may want to be careful when you actually specifically select only an individual group of bank accounts to act upon that rule, and you add a new bank account or a new credit card. That rule may not necessarily be activated to a new bank or a new credit card. So you may have to go back into the rule, click select all bank accounts, and so to make the rule move again. Okay, so that's as much I wanted to cover about that. So we got bank feeds as one of the great alleviators of data entry, and as you see with this QBO hacking concept, you could even modify the experience a little bit. There are other interesting ways to look at bank feeds. For example, many a times my client will give me a CSV file of a bank account that was closed. So they were insightful enough to download the CSV file, but not the QBO file. So if the bank account is closed, I can't direct connect, and I can't go back to the bank and get a QBO file. So I use there's two tools out there that do the exact same thing, MoneyThumb and ScanWriter, that could actually convert a CSV file to a .qbo file or push direct import into QuickBooks. Or in the case of or a PDF file, I have a PDF bank statement that's a digital PDF or a scanned PDF or a scanned paper statement. I can use either MoneyThumb, which is 2qbo.com, or ScanWriter, personable.com. Check them out. I mean, these tools are not inexpensive in any ways. I mean, some of these are $1,000 plus, like ScanWriter. Some of these are a couple $100, like MoneyThumb, and they do different things. So it's good to explore them both before making a decision. But bank feeds is so crazy powerful that I prefer to use bank feeds even in an unconventional situation where I'm not really feeding the data from the bank. I have the data in some other ways. There's also consideration to not use bank feeds. In some cases, people say, "Hey, I have a CSV file with all my bank information, and the payee in my Excel file matches my payee in QuickBooks, and my CSV file also happens to have the account category on it." So if you happen to have a spreadsheet that contains all the bank information plus the actual account, the chart of accounts account, and it matches your QuickBooks file, then maybe you want to consider just do a direct import. It's going to be much faster anyway because I don't have to do bank rules. Remember, the difference between importing data directly using Transaction Pro or Set Access or any of those tools that do direct import and using bank feeds is bank feeds. It becomes the middleman that can interpret payees or vendor names because the banks are not always consistent on the way they bring in payees. Again, if you go to Office Depot in New York, that will have a store number next to it. If I go to Office Depot in Miami, different store number next to it. For me to do direct import, I would have to have a different vendor for every single Office Depot, or I would have to clean it in Excel to be able to import it. So you might want to. So there's two approaches to this fast data entry concept. It's either bank feeds, which requires you to bring a QBO file, .qbo file, and it may require a third-party tool to convert it to QBO and enjoy all the benefits of bank feeds and bank rules. Or if you have a full spreadsheet with the account numbers, then you may want to look at direct import. And we've done other webinars, and if you go to the YouTube channel, we have other things related to direct import and that sort of thing. So I'll end it there because I don't like going over because I charge by the hour. I'm just kidding. I don't like going over just because some people have to go. So the upcoming episode is going to be in 2 weeks. Tricky QBO conversions, payroll, inventory, and sales tax. These are the three sort of pain points when it comes to QBO conversion. Michelle's going to do that episode, and she has a lot of content around that. And then 2 weeks afterward, we're going to have Mark Wickersham back. He's a CA from not from Canada. He's a CA from the UK, and he has a very interesting approach to value pricing new QuickBooks Online setups. And in the average, he says that his system or his process between $1,000 to $2,000 on every single QBO client, the way he packages the consulting work and the entire setup. So I'm really looking forward to that one. See what he's got to say about that. That will be in a month, basically. All right, so join Michelle's LinkedIn group, Successful QuickBooks Consultants, with over 160,000 members. Continue the conversation, ask your questions, or join the QB Power Hour Facebook group. There's the link, or just search QB Power Hour and ask your questions. Continue the conversation. Michelle, you want to say something before we end?
Nope, just thanks everybody for joining us. And like you said, we hope to see you in the groups and on social. And thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.